Welcome back, everybody. Let's kick off today's deep dive with something exciting, English basics. We've got this super cool lesson for beginners, and we're going to pull out all the must-knows for, communicating in English.
That's a great idea. I mean, you could really do a lot with just a handful of key phrases and concepts. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Now, this lesson starts off, with names and introductions. The super basics, right? Like, my name is, and what is your name? The building blocks.
Yeah. I really like how it uses repetition right off the bat. It's a really effective way to, make things stick, almost like a little chant.
Repetition is key. It's so true. Okay, so the examples they use in the lesson are actually kind of fun. Lisa Roberts, Ali Aksoy, Marie Pierre, they've got a global feel to them.
It is. It kind of shows you right away, English is spoken everywhere by all sorts of people from different backgrounds.
It does. Now, one thing that can be tricky, I think, when you're, first starting out with English is the whole first name, last name thing. The lesson makes it really clear, which is super helpful.
For sure. It's one of those things native speakers totally take for granted, but, it's important to understand, especially in formal contexts.
Exactly. And speaking of formal, the lesson dives into titles Mr., Mrs., Mrs. It explains when to use each one, which I think can be kind of a minefield sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. Those titles are all about respect, though.
Yeah.
And using them right sends a signal that you get, the social norms of English-speaking cultures.
It's true. The lesson uses these kind of funny examples to show how titles work, imagine Dr. Curry meeting Princess Diana.
Oh, wow.
Or Mother Teresa having a chat with President Clinton.
That's great. Those are great visuals,
Yeah.
Helps you remember when you might need to use those formal titles, out in the real world.
Now let's move to something a bit more informal.
Mm-hmm.
The lesson covers those kinds of introductions too, just saying, this is name.
Yeah.
Nice and straightforward.
Sometimes simple is best, especially, when you're just starting.
Totally agree. And then, of course, there's the essential, hello, I'm, woo. It's like your verbal name tag, right?
Sure.
Super useful.
So true. You can use that phrase in so many situations, meeting new people, introducing yourself in a class,
Yeah.
Even just striking up a conversation with someone in a store.
Yeah.
It's very versatile.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so ready to go to the next level of, English construction?
Yeah. Hit me with it.
All right, so let's unpack this idea of possession. The lesson breaks down possessive pronouns. Words like my, your, his, her, its, our, their.
Yeah. Those are so key for talking about who owns what or,
Yeah.
the relationship between people and things.
Exactly. And the lesson, it points out something that can trip people up. I think singular versus plural
Yeah.
forms.
It's, a fundamental part of English grammar.
Yeah.
And, it affects how we use those possessive pronouns, right?
It does. And just to keep things fun, the lesson throws in this funny little example. Its name is Dolly, like a doll.
That's cute.
It's a silly way to remember the word its,
Those little memory tricks can be so helpful, especially for those who are visual learners.
For the, I don't know what to call it, the big kahuna of English grammar.
Oh, here we go.
The verb to be.
This is a biggie. To be is it's the foundation of so many sentences in English.
It is. The lesson walks us through all those different forms. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is, we are, they are.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but I think the lesson does a really good job of, breaking it down using those simple examples.
It does. I am Molly. He is Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
It helps you see how to be just fits right into a simple sentence.
And you know what? Those simple sentences are actually really useful. Think about it. You can use those to describe yourself, introduce other people, even talk about the weather. It is sunny today. Basic, but effective.
Exactly. Now, once you've got those forms down, guess what you can start doing?
Asking questions.
Exactly. The lesson teaches us how to use to be to form, those essential yes-no questions.
Yeah. Am I or you? Is he? Mastering those really opens up a whole new world of, communication possibilities.
It does. And the lesson covers how to answer those questions too.
Yeah.
With both positive yes and negative no responses.
Yeah, and it even shows you those contractions,
Hey,
right?
perfect.
I'm for, I am, and isn't for is not. Those contractions really make your English sound more natural, more fluent.
It does. And remember that doll from earlier?
Oh, Dolly.
Well, guess who makes a comeback? The lesson uses "is it Dolly?" as an example question.
Oh, I love it.
Our little doll is turning into an English tutor,
So it's a fun way to, tie everything together, keep the lesson engaging. Plus, it kind of shows that even grammar can have, like, a sense of humor.
It can. Okay, you know what? We're nearing the end of this first part of our English adventure. It's time to tackle something that's, super important for reading and writing.
Oh, okay, I'm ready.
The alphabet and spelling.
Right. It's the foundation, right? The foundation of any written language. Let's get to it.
First up, we get a rundown of the English alphabet, those 26 letters that make up every word we use. The lesson highlights like vowels and consonants. It's key, for understanding how those sounds work in English.
And it's like, groups letters together for practice, which I think makes it, less overwhelming, right? Like you're not just faced with this jumble of letters.
Yeah, it's like learning smaller chunks instead of, trying to swallow the whole alphabet in one bite.
Exactly. And then we move on to another important distinction, right? Capital letters, also called uppercase letters. And then their, lowercase counterparts.
Now, this is where it can get a little tricky, but I think the lesson does a really good job of explaining, when to use which type of letter.
It does. And it especially emphasizes, the importance of like capitalizing names.
Oh, yes.
Right. Like it's a sign of respect, shows that you get like, the conventions of written English.
The lesson even gives us a chance to practice spelling a few simple names from earlier. Molly, Lisa, Ali. It's a good way to like apply what we've learned about, the alphabet and capitalization.
Yeah. Plus it like, reinforces those names in your memory.
Yeah.
Which is helpful, for those early conversations. Like, what's your name? My name is Molly.
It is. All right, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into English basics. We've covered a ton, from introductions and greetings to like possession, that essential verb to be, and even, the alphabet and spelling.
Yeah, it's a really great foundation for anyone, starting to learn English. And you know what? I think we did all this like without getting bogged down in, like technical jargon. Mm-hmm. It's clear, it's concise, and it's even, I think, a little bit fun.
I'm glad you think so. We really wanted this deep dive to be, accessible, engaging, even for those who are like absolute beginners.
I think we achieved that. So to all our listeners out there who are, maybe starting their English language journey, take a moment. Just think about what we've covered so far, what stands out, what feels like, maybe the most important, or even like, maybe a little bit exciting. Hold on to those thoughts as we, get ready to dive into part 2.
Welcome back to our English language deep dive. Ready to like explore some more of those essential concepts.
Absolutely. I'm, excited to see what our beginner's lesson has like, in store for us next.
Okay. So it looks like we're diving into the world of singular and plural forms, a key part of English grammar.
It's all about understanding that, difference between one and more than one. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Sounds simple enough, but it, really affects how we use a lot of different words in English.
It does. The lesson, makes it crystal clear. Singular means one thing, and plural means, 2 or more things.
And it gives us those simple examples, that really drive the point home, like student for, like, one person, students for a group, or is when you're talking about one thing, and are when you're talking about more than one.
It's amazing how one little letter can change the whole meaning of a word, right?
It really is.
Speaking of words that can change, the lesson also touches on something that can be a little tricky, especially for learners whose, native language works differently.
Okay.
Gender in English?
Ah, yes. The he versus she dilemma, right?
Yes.
Unlike, some other languages, English doesn't have, grammatical gender for most nouns. So, we don't say, the masculine table or the feminine chair.
Which can be, confusing.
Right.
I think the lesson lays it out in a, pretty straightforward way, though. He for males, she for females, easy peasy.
And then there's that handy little pronoun it, which we use for things and sometimes for animals, if we don't know their gender, or if it's just, not important in that moment.
It really is, like a workhorse in the English language. And the lesson, does a good job of showing how versatile it can be.
For sure, for sure. Okay, you ready for a quick grammar pit stop?
I am.
Okay. This one might seem small, but trust me, it's a big deal in English. We need to talk about articles. Those little words, a, an, and the.
Yep. Articles are like the unsung heroes of, English grammar.
Right.
I know they can be tough for learners to, wrap their heads around.
Oh, yeah. It's all about understanding, whether you're talking about something general or something specific.
And the lesson makes that distinction super clear. A or an for something general, the for something specific.
Exactly. If you say, I saw a cat, you're just talking about any cat, right?
Yeah.
But if you say, I saw the cat, you're talking about a particular cat, one that, like, you and the listener probably both know about.
Oh, I see.
Right. What about that, a versus in business?
Okay. Yeah, that one I know can trip people up.
It's actually pretty straightforward. Like, it all comes down to the sound of the word that, comes after it. So if the next word starts with a consonant sound, you use a. But if it starts with a vowel sound, you use an.
So a book, but an apple.
Exactly.
Got it.
You see
It's
it.
those little details that make English so, interesting.
I know, right? Okay, you up for another grammar challenge?
I think so.
All right, this one is all about, like, making sure that your sentences are, like, in harmony. And we call this subject-verb agreement.
Ooh, subject-verb agreement. Sounds kind of, like, intimidating, but I have a feeling our lesson is gonna, break it down for us.
Don't worry. It does. It's all about, making sure that your verbs match the number of your subjects. So singular subjects need singular verbs. Plural subjects need plural verbs. It's all about, like, balance,
Okay, so let's imagine we're talking about one student studying, right? You'd say the student I is studying. But if you're talking about a whole group of students, it becomes the students are studying. It's all about, matching that verb to how many people or things you're talking about.
Exactly. It seems subtle, but it makes your English sound, like, so much more natural and fluent,
Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about subject-verb agreement now. How about we, take a break from grammar for a second and, explore some new vocabulary?
I'm all for a vocabulary boost. Like, what kinds of words are we adding to our English toolkit this time?
Well, our lesson is focusing on greetings and farewells. Those little phrases we use all the time to start and end conversations?
Oh, those are so important. You can communicate so much with, just a few well-placed greetings and farewells.
Totally. We learn how to say hello, of course, but also good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and all the ways to say goodbye.
And the lesson, points out that some of those greetings are more formal than others, right? Like, hello's more versatile, but, like, good evening is usually reserved for, like, more formal situations.
It is, interesting how language can, reflect that level of formality in a situation. Right?
Absolutely. And along with the greetings, the lesson gives us, like, some basic phrases for making introductions. Like, this is, or nice to meet you.
It's all about, giving you the phrases you need to navigate, those everyday social interactions.
Exactly. And, let's not forget about farewells. There's that simple goodbye, but also more casual options like see you later or take care.
And the lesson even mentions, have a nice day, which is such a classic, American, English farewell.
It is.
It might not be used as often in, other English-speaking countries, but it's definitely good to know.
It is. It's a great example of how, language can reflect, those cultural differences, even within, the English-speaking world.
Okay, so in this part of our English deep dive, we've gone from singular and plural to articles and subject-verb agreement, and we even added some essential vocabulary for, greetings and farewells to our, repertoire.
It's like, we're piecing together a puzzle,
Yeah.
adding more and more elements to our, understanding of the English language.
What's, standing out to you as we kind of wrap up this part of our journey?
I think what's really striking me is just, how practical this lesson is,
Yeah.
It's not just about, abstract grammar rules. It's about giving you, the tools you need to actually communicate,
I totally agree. It's about taking those grammar concepts and turning them into, real world phrases that you can use every day.
Exactly. And the way, the lesson incorporates, humor, and those clear, concise explanations, it makes the learning process just so much more enjoyable. It doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like a discovery.
And on that note of discovery, are you ready to embark on, the final leg of our English adventure?
Oh, I am so ready. Bring it on. I want to see, what other treasures this lesson has to, reveal to us.
All right, we're back for the final part of our English deep dive. Ready to, uncover some more secrets of this awesome language?
Absolutely. Let's see what our beginner lesson has for us today.
Okay, it looks like we're tackling prepositions. Those little words that tell us, where things are or when something happens.
Yeah, those can be tricky, but I think we can handle them.
I think so too, with the help of our lesson. So which prepositions are we looking at today?
Well, the lesson focuses on some of the most common ones, like in, on, at, to, from, and with.
Ah, those are definitely essentials. I remember when I was learning English, those were tough.
Yeah, it's a common struggle. But the key is to, see how they're used in context. And I think the lesson does a pretty good job at that.
Mm-hmm.
Providing clear examples to show how each preposition works.
Right, like the book is on the table, or I'm going to the store.
Exactly, exactly. And it's important to remember that prepositions don't always, translate directly from one language to another.
It's true.
So, don't try to force your native language's logic onto English prepositions.
And good point.
Just observe how they're used naturally in English, and you'll start to get a feel for it.
Yeah, it's all about immersing yourself in the language and letting those patterns sink in.
Absolutely. Okay, how about we switch gears and, add some more vocabulary to our, toolkit?
Sounds good. What kind of vocabulary are we talking about this time?
Well, our lesson is going to give us some useful words for talking about daily routines and activities.
Oh, cool.
Think about it. We talk about our routines all the time. Waking up, getting ready, going to work or school, eating meals. Being able to describe those, everyday activities is so essential.
It's like giving you the words to, narrate your own life in English.
Exactly. And by learning this vocabulary, you'll not only be able to talk about your own routines, but you'll also understand, others when they're talking about theirs.
Right. It's all about making those connections and, feeling more comfortable in those everyday conversations. Okay. You ready for another round in the grammar ring?
Hit me.
This time it's all about tenses, specifically the present simple tense.
Ah, yes. The present simple, the one we use to talk about things we do regularly or things that are always true. It's like the bread and butter of English tenses.
It is. And this lesson gives you the recipe for forming present simple sentences, positive, negative, as well as questions.
So we'd learn how to say things like, I eat breakfast every day, she doesn't like coffee, and do you work on weekends? It's a great, overview of one of the most fundamental tenses in English.
And mastering the present simple is laying the groundwork for understanding all the other tenses, right?
It really is.
Once you get this one down, the others will fall into place more easily.
It's true. The present simple is the foundation of your English tense house.
I love that analogy. Speaking of building, I think we've reached the top floor of our English language skyscraper. We've covered so much in this deep dive. Prepositions, vocabulary for daily routines, and even the present simple tense.
It's been quite the journey. What I find really impressive about this lesson is that it never loses sight of the learner.
I agree.
It's clear, it's concise, and it anticipates those challenges that new English speakers might face.
It does feel like a, friendly guide leading you through the, intricacies of English, but never making you feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. And, it reminds us that learning a language is a process. It takes time, it takes practice, but it's a journey worth taking.
So to all our listeners out there who are on their own English learning adventures, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and maybe even a little boost of motivation. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and never stop being curious about this, amazing world of the English language.
Well said. Happy learning, everyone.